Mini Jake, the tribe has spoken.
Fuck you, Kevin.
Aw, fuck you too, sweetie.
I'm JJ, one of the original Tribe of Nerds members. You can catch me on Marvel, Pokemon, and other gaming podcasts.
What up? It's Josh, resident superhero nerd, but I also dabble in the occasional super villain as well.
Some may know me as the Chaos Gremlin, but really I'm just Joe King.
Pikachu, use Volt Tackle! Good job, Pikachu!
On the Tribe of Nerds. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Tribe of Nerds. Shane and I are back for another Survivor What If, and we're here with Anthony Robinson from Survivor Fiji. Welcome, Anthony, to the Tribe of Nerds.
Hello. Thank you for having me. Glad to be here.
Yeah, this is exciting. So, Anthony, we're pondering the question in the Survivor multiverse, if you changed one thing, what would happen differently? And so you brought up before we started recording about what if you had found the idol, and we wanted to know, like, what if you had been able to find this idol? What if you had been able to survive the tribal council where you got voted out, presumably over Rocky? So tell us, walk us through how that would have gone.
Well, first and foremost, the simple thing is, like, I would not have gone home. I probably would have been. I know this because how I am and how I was playing the game in my mindset. One, I wouldn't have been like, a lot of people make the mistake that they go out and they find an idol. They're like, I got the idol. It wasn't going to be me. I was going to wait to the last possible moment, and I probably would have been come across a lot more confident going in. But I would have played it.
Yeah.
So no ifs, ands, or buts about that. I would have played it because even though it may appear in the edit that I was blindsided, I was not blindsided. I knew I was going home. But I would have played it up. I would have been like, okay, I'd been like, all right. I would have talked to people, and really, it would have been me sending not Rocky home. And see, this is the thing most people don't. Everybody would think it was Rocky. The plan was actually Mookie was the next vote.
Oh.
Because Mookie was, of the two of them, the bigger of the brains. No offense to my friend James. For those of you who don't know, Jimmy and I are friends. James and I are friends. But of the two of them at the time, when all of our talking and going on, because for those of you guys who don't know, like, there was a Black Alliance that happened. Some people know about it. But me and Earl have been talking about this for a bunch, about who the next person was going to be off, and really the way both of us were thinking, and who Yowman was thinking was kind of how we were going to do it. And before the shuffle happened, was that Mookie was going to be the next person to go home, and really Mookie was one of the big people who was pushing for me to go, even more so than Rocky. Rocky was sick of me for being the girly man. He was being in touch with my feelings at the time, but no, it was Mookie that was going to be going home. That was going to be my next vote. It was going to be for Mookie, which would have changed a whole lot of other things later on. And I think if I got Mookie off, then that would have put Rocky in a different position, because then I'd have like Dreams would have been on my side, and kind of Dreams was on my side because I told Dreams on the scenes not to blow up his game, so that was a big thing. It's like, don't blow up your game on my account. Like, go vote how you have to vote. And in retrospect, I should have pushed a little bit harder for that. But I was like, I'm not gonna mess him up because I want those guys to get there. And but then I would have had me and Dreams, right? And at that point, without Mookie there, Alex is going to be a lot more approachable, a lot more easier to talk to. And then, given that I know James would have been pissed at me, all right, so Rocky would have been pissed at that whole situation. He would have been like blown up, which it would have been the exact same thing you saw with him going home. I'm pretty certain that vote would have changed it to folks voting for him. Although we were looking at trying to get him to stay later in the game to be like the easy vote goat later on. So a lot of that strategy kind of just got blown up by me going home. So, but if I found that idol, which I realized the lady that I was dating at the time, we just gotten back from on New Year's Day. We were in a hotel room. I was taking a shower, and we just got back from like a trip, like big old trip for New Year's. And I'm literally in the shower, and that moment at the end of The Usual Suspects where he sees like all the stuff and he realizes Kaiser Soze. That happened to me. Like that happened to me in the shower. It's like I'll never forget it. It's like 9:30 in the morning, 2007. In some hotel near Los Gatos, where me going like, it's like, flashing to Sylvia. It's like, oh well, we'll just keep this area clear. Flashing to Yale Man. No, I think that's deep enough. We dug that thing. We don't need to dig any deeper here. Flashing to like the little note, and it's like dig deep. Dig deep is where you sleep. Flashing to like the other clue, like the high point. Flashing to like no. We don't need to do anything more digging here. Everybody kept trying to get me not to dig, and I realized that moment that I had an entire day by myself before the vote, where here it is like. Literally months later where I realized where it was, and I screamed in the shower. I was like, God damn it. And my girlfriend at the time was like, she's like, what? Excuse me, I'm sorry. I just completely destroyed the thing on that. Bleep it. But I was like, no. She's like, what? I'm like, I just realized where the something that would have made my life a lot easier on the island. She's like, oh, okay. Because she didn't know at that point what happened. Because I was really good about not telling anybody. Yeah, I realized that later, and I was mad about it because as soon as I saw what happened on TV, I'm like, that's where it was. I knew exactly where it was. Like, 2 months too late. So, yeah, the short version of that is yes, Mookie would have gone home. That would have been the vote. Get Mookie home. And I think if that had flowed the way that I think it was going to flow, I would have made the merge and then completely different game.
Yeah, absolutely. I did want to ask as well, at the tribal council you went home, how did you feel about Jeff Probst at that tribal council? Because Jeff seemed very biased in a certain direction.
Oh, Jeff was biased. Yeah, Jeff was very biased. It was. So if you got to see any of the post-credit things, or rather the exit interview, so if you're watching that, or if you go to the DVD and you can see the full thing, you see how angry I am at that point, right? I was angry. Like, one of the last things my mom and my grandma told me before before I left was, watch your temper. I come across as, I come across as very kind of laid back, like whatever it is, but I get a temper, and it manifests in kind of really weird ways where I'll shoot my mouth off, which you saw little bits of because I was doing everything to suppress it. And after that tribal council, because I was still hoping, I knew it wasn't, it was kind of useless, but I was still hoping to kind of play the, to let folks know that I'm cool. Like, I'm not going to lose my crap at these people. And Jeff kept pushing the button. He's just like, don't you think he's right? Don't you think you need to speak up? Don't you hear more, man? I was like, bro, every time I stand up out here, I get my ass handed to me because somebody wants to smack me down, and I can't get mad the way that I need to get mad because it just changes. It changes my gameplay. It changes how people are going to come at me. Did I want to yell at everybody? Yes. Did I want to curse Jeff out? If you look at my face at that moment where he snuffs my torch, it was like had Jeff said anything more than the tribe had spoken, or it's like I've been going home in handcuffs. I was like, because I was like, I want to hit somebody so bad, but I can't, and I don't, and I don't want to, because even though I get angry about stuff, I'm not, I'm not that kind of guy.
Right.
I will yell at you as opposed to throw a punch at you. But really, I wanted to call him a string of names, and I was like, I want to call him a string of names. I was honestly, I think I was more mad at Jeff than I was at Rocky. I was disappointed in getting voted off, and I was disappointed in in how that's played out with Rocky, and I was disappointed in how stuff that with Mookie. Like I was really sad about it, and to have Jeff go like, hey, yeah, you should be more man. You should be like, it's like I agree with him. It's like, bro, don't pile on. It's like you're the last person who needs to pile on this.
Right.
The so-called neutral party. So yeah, I was not pleased. And I was very glad to get to scream afterwards, because I had been holding on to that yell, the primal scream, literally for 16 days, for 2 weeks, and I spent every day just wanting like to yell and cry and like kick things, and that was really the first chance I had gotten to. So that's where I was with that.
Yeah, that's interesting. Do you remember, did you like talk at all in casting about like you thought you had a temper and you were trying to hold it in? Because if you did, I wonder if Jeff was purposely trying to push you there.
No, not so much about like me having a temper. I mean, that's a thing for me that's always kind of been. And like I said, it manifests a lot different than most people think it is. Most people think it's like, like screaming, yelling, punching. For me, it's like, sometimes when you saw me cry on national television, I was not sad, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So that's, yeah, and I know it's like one of those things where everybody goes, what? I'm like, yeah. But that's kind of where I was. And so like a lot of times I get quiet when I get really, really, really angry. I'll get quiet because like, it's me just bite my tongue, my little cheek. So like, yeah, see me sitting there during travel, like just like glaring. I was actually glaring. I was like glaring. It's like, nope, don't say anything. Don't say anything. But no, I didn't say anything during the casting process because it really wasn't a thing. I was trying to, for me, the big thing was portraying who I am and portraying like the side of me that is, the nerdy, wine shirt wearing, gaming geek that I am. So that was my big thing for it. So I think with Jeff, his thing all the way through casting and through like the early interviews and even like just kind of even there during all the travels that we went to, all the travels we went through. His big thing I think for me was that I don't think that he. Okay, let me back up a second. So you guys everybody who's a fan of the show knows that Jeff has a very specific view of the kind of guys that he likes to play, right? Mm-hmm. So he has a very specific view of who he thinks like winners are, right? Mm-hmm. And of the men who play the game, he has a very kind of like tight view of who those men are and how they play. So even with our more nerdier friends, right, that have been on the show, it's like like even if Cochran, I'm just throw out that Cochran. Even with Cochran, all right, you see how he's kind of like, come on, John, like he wants people to be aggressive in how they play the game. It's part of the reason why he doesn't like people who quit. He likes aggressive play, and I get that, but that's not everybody's game,
right? And
for some of us, it is much more the social side of things, and we're going to play it in many different ways depending on who you're talking with. I mean, it's funny because everybody, I know a lot of folks, think that like I don't have the social skills, like we can cross, and that I think that was one of Jeff's things. Like, you don't really have the social skills to win. But like I came out of that game with contact information and numbers for pretty much everybody my entire season. Mm-hmm. So at some point or another in the last like 18 years, I've talked to or hung out with everybody from my season.
Wow.
And even folks who sit on the different political sides of the political fence, we are very much, a lot of us are family. Not everybody talks to each other. I talk to and is still in contact with most everybody, even if it's tangentially from here to there. Some folks I haven't talked to in a little while. That's just life. But I talked to Rocky relatively recently. I owe Earl like a dozen calls. Earl was in my wedding party. Jessica DeBen I've hung out with, and Liliana. Try to keep track of everybody as much as I can. I talked to Papa Smurfy once in Blue Moon too. So we've kind of his life's been going on with him, his kids, his grandkids. It's like we all kind of keep track of each other. I even shout out at Mookie every once in a while, Mookie and folks and Gardo. I keep track of, I follow their Instagrams, they follow me. It's kind of a thing. But to kind of back up there, Jeff's whole thing is that, like I said, Jeff has a very specific kind of person that he likes to be out there, like this aggressive guy. And because of that, he wants to push everybody to be like on their fire. He wants to push everybody to be on their fire. And it makes it really hard when you forget that he's playing the game. Like, everybody forgets that Jeff is a integral player in the game. You take Jeff out of the game. I mean, like, you watch how things go, like, during regular things, and then you put Jeff in that tribal situation, or you put him on, on the challenge, and it's a different scenario, right? Like, that same guy who's been confident this entire time, or that same woman who's been confident this entire time, gets out there and Jeff's calling it, blowing up their game, right?
Right.
He's watching everything. People forget that he is the additional player out there. And the moment, so as the advice for anybody who goes on there is like, remember, Jeff is part of the game. He is not an independent, outside, neutral observer. He is playing just along with you. The difference is he can't be voted out, right? And he can give two craps of what you really think of him in the end, because he has a game to run.
Yeah.
So because of that, for me being out there, Jeff, I was trying to stay quiet. His thing is he doesn't want anybody to be quiet. He wants people to talk. He wants people to participate. And I was trying to shrink back, during tribal, I was very much trying to shrink back into the wallpaper, and he just wouldn't let it. He wouldn't let it. And it was like, okay, thanks. I wanted people to forget that I was here. They'd forgotten. Everybody's talking about everything else. Everybody's thought about me, and suddenly it's like, oh, my name's on paper again. For another time. Jeff has a vested interest in tripping people up. I think, like, not in a purposeful tripping people up way, but just to kind of keep you from shrinking away and disappearing. He's got to keep you active. So,
right.
Yeah.
Shane, you wanted to ask about the big behind the scenes question.
Yeah, I think a lot of us who are fans have always wondered, because with Fiji, your season, it feels like with the edit, there's so much left out that we didn't see. And one thing I've heard is it comes down to on day one, where you were all mixed together and you didn't have tribes. And I heard there were two big alliances that formed, Builders and Explorers. And wanted to see, could you speak to that at all? And like maybe speak to when you first started the game, like were you expecting kind of this mix up where you're all together? I assume not, because they probably had to call an audible when they lost a player last minute.
Yeah, no, we definitely did not expect, like, I don't think any of us really had any other expectations except that we'd all just watch the opening for Cook Islands. So, it's like, oh, we're going to get separated by race. Okay. Because, I mean, if you look at our cast, right? I mean, at that point, it was like the two most diverse casts in Survivor's history.
Right.
Right. So, if you count folks, and we were counting, we're like, okay, there's 20 of us. And, we freaked out as we were paddling in, because we were like, all realized that, like, we're like, oh my God, we had a spy in our midst, because we're counting, like, why is not 20 out here? Because we didn't know. We didn't realize that she had dropped out until, like, we were literally on the rafts, rowing in. And we're all counting, and it's like, there's only 19 of us here. Holy crap. But, beforehand, we're looking at who was out there, and it was, we had 5 white kids, we had 5 black kids, we had 5 Hispanic kids, and 5 Asian kids, and it was like, okay, they're going to do it again. That was our first thought, and then we get to the beach and there's nobody there. You know, it's like we get to the beach and it's like, you know, we get the note dropped in and it's like, oh, we have to build a tree house. Oh, okay. So when's he gonna split us up? Oh, okay. The game doesn't start until we finish building. Right. Well, you know, that took like that took a couple of days.
Yeah.
um, and yeah, it ended up. I don't think it intentionally ended up being builders versus explorers, but it kind of worked out that way. And really, it just because bodies, you know, it's you put too many bodies on one thing, and Sylvia very much took charge and kind of like directing because she's an architect, and that's what, you know, that was her thing. And then Gary took the other hand of building it because Gary was flipping houses. So you know, so there's Papa Smurf, who's a builder, who's a contractor, and we got, you know, we got a contractor and you know, and the architect who are out there basically just took charge of it, which is why they ended up, you know, picking people. And that was funny because Gary stepped back from that real quick. It's like, no, I'm not gonna pick. No, she was in charge. But really, what it ended up being was that, you know, the two of them kind of ran the thing, and there was that point where it was kind of like, okay, I'm gonna step back because I'm trying to conserve. You know, I'm being greedy. I'm trying to conserve my energy, and two, I want to find out what's going on the island, and, you know, just like where are things, where's food, and just kind of like seeing what's out there. And because I know that, you know, we knew that there was an idol out there, and, you know, we knew there was an idol out there, and at least one, and, you know, from other seasons that have had stuff out there, you know, they'd had a few idols out there before, so it wasn't like it was a surprise. So it was kind of like, okay, how do we find these? Can we, you know, how do we find clues? Because at that point we're still looking for clues, right? And it kind of broke down to those of us who were carrying everything up and down the hills. So, you know, it was like a bunch of us went up the hill to get all the lumber and stuff down because part of what you don't see is just how much stuff there was. Like, they took it to the top of the freaking hill, and, you know, all that lumber that we built all that stuff with and cut, and all those long poles, right? All those 2x4s and 3x4s and all that stuff, and, you know, 4x9s and 6, you know, like all that lumber was at the top of the hill. We had to go up and down this hill in the, you know, the 100-degree Fijian heat, you know, 100% humidity, and, you know, it was hard. And when we got stuff down, you know, we didn't really get to start building till the second day, because that first day was just like getting everything down. And I think we got part of the platform built, you know, just like enough that we could sit on. But yeah, you know, on the second day, it was kind of like, okay, well, we're taking turns, and, you know, we're getting pulled off for interviews. So a bunch of us kind of just went out and walked the island until they needed our bodies to help them with certain things, which is how I ended up walking around with Dreams for part of that day. And Dreams, and you know, it was just the funny thing of one of the things they don't show you. And Tom Shelley, who was, you know, one of the executive producers on the show at the time, told me that you know, they were all aware of it because they've been seeing this and knew we were talking about it. They just, for whatever reason, they chose not to put it on. I think it was just either time or just story wise, which may have played out differently if, you know, more of us had gotten further. But that Black Alliance, before the cookout, all right, before Big Brother's cookout, there was the Fijian Black Alliance, and we all looked at each other in day one. And you can ask Earl and most of the other ones. We kind of looked at each other, and nobody said anything. We just kind of looked at everyone and went, yeah, like it was this unspoken thing. We all kind of nodded at each other, and, you know, by the time we all went, that, like you said, that explorer group, you know, Earl was kind of hanging around building and walking around a little bit. He was talking with Cassandra, and I was walking around with Dreams, and we were kind of talking to each other, and I was walking around with Erica, some other people, and it was a lot more of the quote unquote younger to middle age, you know, folks who were doing the exploring, and we kind of all like kind of talked, and, like, you know, looked at Dreams. I said, Dreams, you know, it's like, what do you think of those guys? And, like, oh, cool. Like, so should we do it? And he's like, yeah. And, like, that was the entire conversation, right? The entire conversation is we're carrying nails with this bucket that the bottom dropped out. So we're, you know, walking around with this, you know, this bucket holding us like this, was, you know, like, so should we do it? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And that was it. That was the entire conversation. And then later on with me and, you know, me and Earl, I think Erica was standing there and was kind of like, okay, we doing this? It's like, yeah, okay, we're gonna do it. And everybody had talked to everybody else individually. So by the end, it was kind of like, I think it was the point I'd look at Earl and say, okay, so you on board? Because I know Dream's on board. Yeah, I'm good with Dreams. We were talking like, Cassandra's on board too. I'm like, okay, cool. I think Erica's down. And then Erica walked over. She's got him down. It was like, okay. And that was it. That was the only conversation that happened, right? And I know that there were cameras nearby, and I don't know if anybody captured it, but that conversation happened. And it was kind of like this weird, wonderfully compartmentalized thing where like, okay, great break. And as far as I know, the only person who was aware of it was Mookie. And I don't know how that happened, but Mookie found out at some point that he was like aware of it. And I found that out much later. I found that out like a couple of years later. We were talking, and Mookie's like, "Oh yeah, I knew about it." I was kind of like, "How'd you know about it?" He goes, "Oh, I found out." And I was like, "Oh, okay." But it was just funny because like that didn't come to air.
Right.
And a lot of those folks were the folks who were wandering around. So like me and Michelle and Jessica DeBen were wandering around talking, making side deals, which is why that was kind of a hard thing when we voted JDB out, because we walked off from that, and then we did the Explorers. I mean, it's funny like because I had never thought of it that way as Explorers versus stuff. Because everybody who walked off to have conversations like had really tight groups. So off that first group of people, the builders, they all kind of like hung out, and they were kind of like this one little group, or out. Either they were this one group or the outsiders, kind of. So Papa, and it was mostly the older folks except for Yao-Man, because Yao-Man went exploring with some people. So Yao-Man will walk off with Earl, and they go walk off and explore, and that happened a lot later too. In that same way, so that's why I was like thinking about it now. Earl and I wandering off and exploring the island when we got to Ravu. We did the same thing. We wandered up, and oftentimes it was the younger folks who were doing that because, Yao-Man would stay put and do it. But what I found really, as I'm thinking about that, is that honestly it's most of those most of the folks who ended up either making really good discoveries for themselves, like like the Idol or which alliance is the better one to people on at the time, or folks who did hang around and build, right? So Michelle did a lot more building, and Yao-Man did more building, and Sylvia but none of the builders, as I really think about it, most of the builders end up not making it far. So let that think about that for a minute. It's like just like a lot of the builders, like a lot of the guys who did the exploring and kind of went off and did their own things, made a lot further in the game. So I think that's that. Thank you for putting that in my brain. Now I'm gonna go.
Yeah, thank you for letting us know, because I think everybody has been wondering what that's been about. Like, and we talked about it on our 1 through 50 series. We just rewatched Fiji and talked about it, so we were like, we really want to know what actually happened. So thank you.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah. But yeah, thanks Anthony for coming on, and so tune in for more Survivor What If interviews and our 1 through 50 series, and we'll see you all next time on the Tribe of Nerds.